All right, welcome to the Underdog Ecom podcast, where two ecom brand founders are figuring out in real time.
Yeah, we're not here to preach. We're here in the thick of it, making mistakes, testing all sorts of ideas, and really sharing the journey of how we've been growing these brands from day zero. Hopefully you learn a little bit, perhaps come away with some ideas that save you time and money. And so if you're tired of the same glittery D2C advice from those 9-figure gurus, you're here in the right place.
Let's get into it. Okay, welcome to episode 12. 12 episodes in, look at that. We're going to be talking a lot about fulfillment today, like in terms of how we're doing it, done in-house, but like in-house versus 3PLs, our experience, all of that. But first of all, how are you doing, David?
I'm alive. Surviving, I think, is the name of the game this year. Just getting up real early, teaching a baby how to drink out of a bottle, and keeping a toddler from having me tear my hair out, you know. Oh, and then running an ecom business. Yeah, it's great.
I don't know if I've mentioned this. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but like I've been speaking to a number of people like who have like toddlers or babies at the moment, and I just like have like so much respect for everyone doing like and running a business at the same time. Like it's incredible. Like the things they tell me they have to deal with, and like it just makes it seem like a walk in the park. Like what I'm doing, I think.
It definitely makes things a little bit more challenging. It's super fun and rewarding, of course, but it's also like, wait, is this how humanity survived for thousands of years? Is having like other humans raising other humans? It's pretty remarkable sometimes. But you know, getting up at 5, changing poopy diapers. I've been at it for a couple hours already. Boom.
Wow. Look at that.
Yeah, it's on the brand side. It's been a whirlwind the last couple weeks. I've been in like trademark hell, which is super fun. I launched a Memorial Day sale and did some like interesting strategies there, more complex than I've typically done. I almost didn't launch the sale, but it's been going super well. I always tend to forget how much people love sales, and which is ironic because I love sales, but I try and avoid them, and I've tried to avoid them in the past, and this probably could be a whole nother deep dive that we get into, but I've been doing them more often just because it helps with inventory management, and it also helps with sales generation, and it's kind of just the go-to standard in some ways when it comes to apparel, because apparel is pretty tricky and very seasonal. And so that's been going really well, and I've got some exciting stuff planned in the pipeline. So there's a lot of excitement and a lot of not fun things happening, like usual.
Yeah, it's interesting about that, like because we don't have Memorial Day here in the UK. But I have to keep aware of it, obviously, because all of our sales happen in the US. But at the same time, we have a long weekend this weekend in terms of like the Monday is off. So people also thinking about that sort of stuff. And I saw another brand that I was following the other day in a similar space to us just did like, you know, free shipping today only, get it before the long weekend sort of thing. And it's amazing how just even without sales, but just kind of the sort of that sort of promotional activity in some way or another can just suddenly kind of just like get the wheels turning and things.
Yeah, it's almost like another sort of quote unquote excuse or touch point to get in front of customers. And granted, there's a lot of noise a lot of times during sales season, like the amount of sales emails marketing emails that I'm getting right now just on my personal email is high. So you have to break through the noise and stuff. But I think it's helpful to kind of have good reasons that make sense with the brand to get in front of people again. And of course.
Yeah. And I think it's a case of mix of like keeping that going in terms of like newness and you know, the promotions and things that, you know, people care about at the same time, like content that is almost like the opposite side of that and like almost educational. And it's hard to balance the two. I struggle with that in terms of, you know, you see some brands out there who just go really hard on one side versus the other. And you almost got to really kind of have the two going at once because I think they both kind of work.
Yeah, I agree. That's where historically I've struggled is like, I don't want to be a brand that discounts every couple quarters and like has massive sell-offs, and don't really want to get into that like pump and dump type cycle. And so try and focus more on small things and not overbuy, which is very hard because that's kind of the reason to clear out stuff if you have too much on hand. Always a balancing act.
Yeah, I think I'm struggling. I've got a bit of that as well. I've been forced this year. I think I've probably mentioned this in other episodes. I've been forced this year to have a lot less inventory. And so in terms of like what I've got on right now, and I mean, like I've certainly got a lot less inventory than I would like, but at the same time, I've got more coming in June and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's in some ways it's nice because, you know, talking about fulfillment in a minute, like I'm not spending so much money on all of that. Shipping is not quite so expensive. but it is hard as we kind of grow out the line a little bit to kind of maintain everything in stock. So I'm kind of struggling with that. But at the same time, I do think I'm in a better situation because I've got less inventory this time round. This year, I think if I compare the inventory had this time last year, I think I'm in a better situation. It's frustrating not having everything in stock because people ask you. I imagine you find the same. You're like, when is this coming back in? And you know, you want to just be like, it's there. Just I want to give it to you, but you know, you sometimes have to just take the rough with the smooth.
Oh, that's such a good point because I think in the past I've struggled and I still struggle with this when I get those emails and people DM me or whatever, that sort of thing, where they're like, hey, when is this shirt getting in stock? When is this color coming back? That sort of thing. And I'm always like, oh no, we need to have everything in stock always. But it's really hard to do that. And I always go
Yeah.
back to that quote from I think it was the 9 Operators pod, where they basically, one of them was like, you'll always be off an inventory, either over or under, and you definitely want to err on the side of under because there's less complications there. I feel like I need to like print that out and put it up on my wall or staple it to my forehead so I remember it, but it's a good one.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. Yeah, I think like I said, this I'm hoping I've got inventory coming in June. Um, I've been traveling quite a bit this year and more maybe than I'd like, but it's been fun. But I'm actually because we're going into film in a minute, but because I do the fulfillment in the US and I have somebody who like a storage unit and somebody I pay to do the storage in the US, I haven't visited that person for 18 months now. Um, and so like I mean I speak to them every day on Slack and stuff like that, but I haven't
Mhm.
seen them in a while. And I've I'm actually starting to do a bit of shipments for a few other or another brand as well, and they're sending like a container worth of stuff to me. So I've got to go out there in June. So I'm planning a trip out there, um, and going to
Cool.
just quickly spend like 5 days there, just kind of making sure that we're actually set up to ship out their stuff as well. You know, all the kind of boring stuff, and I think this kind of will get into sort of the conversation. But that yeah, is when you have to manage it yourself, you kind of have to make sure everything's set up properly. Otherwise, you get some headaches and things, and that's
Mhm.
kind of what I'm dealing with at the moment, trying to make sure we're set up properly for that.
Nice, nice. That's cool. Well, welcome to the US. It'll be the East Coast, right? Not the West Coast.
East Coast, Virginia, which is
Oh,
where I was
oh,
born.
oh yeah. I remember
Yeah,
you saying
I was
that. Nice, nice.
yeah. So it's kind of
That's
weird
awesome.
because I always thought when I left the US when I was like 13 or 14, I would never go back to Virginia. But then when I started to set up like the shipping and everything in the US, I just thought, well, you know, Virginia's not that expensive in comparison to other places in the US. I know people there, like storage is cheap. I know people there, you know, maybe this is
Mhm,
what I should be
mhm.
doing. And yeah, so for some reason now I've got a tie back to Roanoke, Virginia, small town
Nice.
in Southwest. Yeah,
Funny. Where'd you
Southeast.
end
Sorry.
up with the Yeah, southeast, sort of. I would say that's like mid southeast, not super. Anyways,
Yeah.
where'd you end up with the Kickstarter? Like, I remember you were tossing that idea around for new Padel bags, I think. Is that right?
Yeah. So we the bag is coming in June as well. So we did do a pre-order, and I was kind of decide whether to do it on like Kickstarter or on our site and all sorts of stuff. And I basically ended up doing it on our site, for better or for worse.
Mhm.
And it's done okay. I mean, we've got maybe 9, 10,000 in pre-orders or something of it, mostly from our email
Wow.
list.
Wow.
Which I mean, it sounds good. I mean that it's a $200 bag, so you don't have to sell a whole lot to get there. But um, yeah, I was in my head, you always fantasize, you think like things are gonna end up much better. I was kind of hoping I will sell out of like all 200 before they even arrive, and then we'll just ship them out when they arrive. We've sold maybe 50 or 60 bags or something to pre-orders, and then we've got I'm hoping that we can get a few more over there kind of. I think because we're gonna end the campaign in like a week or two, so I'm hoping I can get a few more in to like people kind of
Mhm.
last minute chance to get it like the pre-order discount. But it's been pretty like well received, and it's nice to be able to sell something before it's arrived because it kind of puts some money in the bank to kind of use for other things.
Oh yeah.
So that's been really good. But yeah, I think I don't know whether Kickstarter would have been the right thing to do. I was looking into like the fees associated, waiting 30
Mhm.
days for the payment. I think our cash flow, quite honestly, just can't support
Hmm.
like 30 waiting
Mhm.
30 days for a campaign to end and then to get paid, or like it's like 15 days after. So it's basically like 45 days from when you launch the campaign to actually getting any money in the bank. And I just
Hmm.
I just thought like practically I can't do that. So as much as maybe I wanted to do it on the Kickstarter platform, I just couldn't do it. So maybe I would have made more money doing it on Kickstarter in terms of like reaching out to another audience and not just our existing audience. But yeah, I think another thing I was hoping is that yeah, exactly. I was kind of hoping that running ads to it would do well, just because of maybe the social proof, because we've got like a
Mhm.
like how much we've raised, kind of like tried to come a Kickstarter style on the product page, and how much we've raised and all that sort of stuff, and like a very long form type of landing page for it and everything that kind of really explains
Oh, cool.
in like detail everything about the bag and why we made it and all that sort of stuff. And so I was kind of hoping that, and I think, yeah, I think I should probably try and like create a specific campaign for that, because I've kind of just thrown those ads in with everything else and trying to like just see if it hits. But yeah, I'm kind of hoping that I can kind of get a few more sales through there and maybe hit like, I mean, my dream, I think it'd be ideal if I could hit like 100 before it arrives, but we'll see what happens.
Cool. Well, good luck. That's pretty interesting. I'm gonna ask for a link after the episode so I can check it out.
Yeah,
Because
send
I
it
was
away.
curious about like how you executed on it and like where you did it and that sort of thing, which you covered all of that. Huh. Cool. I've got 2 products, a jacket and a shorts that I'm thinking about doing a pre-order as well for, just for funding purposes. Not ideal, but it will help alleviate that upfront cost. So I'm curious.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I told you, I'm in like a sub group with in the Underdog Ecom, like a sort of a chat, like a chat between 3 of us, between is it Jono? Do you know Jono from our
Yeah.
from yeah, and then also Cody as well
Nice.
from Rally, because they're both doing some like pre-order
Yeah.
campaigns. I think Jono's launches very soon, so like they've been giving me loads of tips, and like we've been sharing stuff, and that's been really helpful. But yeah, he does bags as well, so he's kind of launching on Kickstarter, so very interesting to see like what he does and that sort of stuff.
Oh, that's cool. Nice, nice. Underdog Ecom coming through. I love it.
Yeah, there's the plug.
Cool. Yeah, there's the plug. You don't even have to wait till the end this time. Arma. Nice, nice. All right. Shipping. Who likes shipping? You can ship your pants, I hear. So we thought about topics for this episode. Definitely give us a shout in the comments if you want to hear about anything specific. We've got a load of ideas to run through. Shipping's always been an interesting topic, I think, and it's pretty important. Like, granted, it's like fundamental to the brand, right? Like, how do you get your stuff into people's hands? And so thinking through the major decision point on that is typically, do you go with a 3PL? And do you do that from day one? Do you ship in-house? What does it look like to ship in-house? Would you do either? And so we're going to dig into that a little bit more. Maybe Jack, you can kick it off and tell us like how you ship and why and those sorts of things.
Yeah, so I do it in house. I've dabbled with 3PLs to a very limited extent. I think I mentioned on one of the other episodes that there was at one point because we manufacture in East Asia, so one point for like a certain product I went with a 3PL in Hong Kong to kind of speed things up when we were launching like a pre-order that I wanted to get out. That's the only time I've done with a 3PL. The rest of the time it's always been in-house, and I've done it, I say in-house, like it really did start with me packaging up all the orders like most people. Um, and even my dad getting involved in like getting him to package up
Oh yeah.
orders as well when I couldn't do them all in a day.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and then it kind of it just as I mentioned I think once before, is I started Cancha in the UK, but then ended up kind of migrating over to the US because all the customers were there and everything, and it just seemed like more opportunity. And so because I wasn't living in the US, I was looking at 3PLs and things, but I just ended up doing it with basically with a friend of mine who was quite up for it, and wanted kind of the business on the side, and since then he's taken on somebody else. So like between the two of them, I've got them shipping out orders, even wholesale stuff when it comes in, and I've just got like maybe like a 20-foot container or something at any one time worth of stock that like we can draw from. And like he has he operates like a tennis center, so he has like packing space. We have all like the boxes and, well, more like shipping bags and that sort of stuff there, and so he does all the packing, and then UPS comes there anyway, so I can, and UPS, FedEx, all them come there anyway, so like that, they've got pickups and things. It's fairly easy from that, and we have like a reserve storage type of thing where he kind of fulfill, like, whenever he's running out of a certain SKU, he'll take 10, 15, 20 of them back and then ship from there. So that's kind of how I've done it. And yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because I've always looked at 3PLs, and my original reason for not using a 3PL was because actually the size of our products was quite hard to find some 3PLs that wanted to ship them. And also, I just had some heard lots of horror stories about 3PLs. But I think what we're going to talk about a lot is also like that sometimes, you can, it's not worth, even if it is cheaper, like on paper to do it yourself, like it's maybe not even worth the hassle. But I don't know, what's your experience been?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I have also been tempted by the 3PL route. I have since day zero shipped in-house. I mean, it was me in my house, literally in our spare bedroom for years, shipping stuff. And I remember lining up orders outside our house for the mail lady to pick up. And that was fun, especially on like big sale days like Black Friday and stuff like that. Had a ton of orders. I mean, not a ton, it was like 20 or something like that, but the 20 boxes looks pretty cool
Yeah.
outside your house. And over the years that grew and grew. And then probably like 3-4 years ago or something like that, now I built this backyard warehouse that I'm in right now. Shed. It's a shed. It's not that big. It's 200 square feet. So it's actually a decent size, and apparel takes up a lot of space. Granted, not as big as tennis bags. But I outgrew it pretty fast. I feel like within a year I had to start looking at warehouse space around the area because I'd like there's boxes spilling out onto the lawn, and that was a lot of when the wholesale stuff was kicking off. And so I was ordering t-shirts in quantities of like 200 and that sort of thing, and a bunch of different shirts, and it's crazy how much space you need, and you don't really realize it until you do. And so at that point I migrated to a local warehouse. I shopped around a little bit, but I found one that was actually pretty close to my house, which I feel very fortunate about. And I looked at some others. And at that point too, I was also looking around at 3PLs and trying to figure out like what makes the most sense for the brand. From a strictly cost perspective and doing an analysis, deep dive into the numbers, it's definitely cheaper to use a 3PL, even though I feel like the costs are more upfront in some ways. Like you see the charge from the 3PL at the end of the month, like you get the bill, you get the invoice, and you can see that and be like, oh wow, that's huge. But when you're paying for it yourself, you don't, and there's like a charge here for the person doing it if they're doing it, and there's a charge here for the warehouse, and there's your shipping costs built in Shopify and that sort of thing. Like those are spread out enough where you're like, oh, it's not that much. But it was interesting to do that deep dive into the numbers themselves and run through and be like, oh whoa, it would save money. If money is the top line goal, it would save money to ship via 3PL. I've got a myriad of items of why I don't ship with a 3PL, and maybe at some point I probably will. It's been sort of an ongoing discussion in my head what's best, and I think that granted, like I almost feel like the mainstream advice from a lot of brands, especially in like the 0 to 7 figure, or maybe not 0. It's probably more like, here's what I would say. Like I think you should ship in house until you get to like 100K a year or something like that. I think you should ship. My opinion is you should ship in house until you hate it, because it's really important to get that knowledge and build up that experience of doing it so that you kind of know what to look for when you're shopping for a 3PL or when you're hiring someone to do it. And controlling that customer experience is pretty important, and I think underrated in a lot of ways. And when you outsource from day zero, you don't have that exposure and you don't have that knowledge. And also, I don't know if it makes sense when you're shipping a couple orders a week to do it via a 3PL. But when you get to that fork in the road, the reason why I went with the shipping in-house is so that I can basically have more control. I'm kind of a control freak, which I guess is generally a good thing for running your own brand and being like a CEO kind of person. But I wanted more control over a lot of the processes, being able to throw in like freebies and packing cards and not get charged for them, do like mystery drops, do QA on the products themselves, be able to basically I went with a local warehouse because I want to be able to get things out quickly. Most of my customers, probably half my orders, are from in-state, and so that things can get to other cities here in the area pretty quickly. And so that's helpful. I also work with a lot of nonprofit partners, and so they generally are like, hey, can we have a donation tomorrow? Which wouldn't necessarily be possible if it was at a 3PL in Missouri or something like that. The unboxing, I think there's also a hidden benefit of doing a lot of BTS, behind the scenes and content. and that's sort of possible if you have a 3PL, but you don't have as much help with it. So that's been also really helpful in the process to kind of like pull back the curtain and share on social and give those behind the scenes looks. QA is an important part in my process because I don't necessarily like, I'm changing products all the time. I'm changing designs all the time. And so being able to QA them when they come in and have a really detailed look at them to make sure that they're good. I know that that process can be done at the factory end. I'm not big enough to really have like a QA person at a factory do it for me, although a lot of my suppliers do it. I still find some mistakes when they arrive. So that's been an important reason for it. I think one of the biggest drawbacks though is like you basically, it's like at the end of the day, the question is, do you want to run your brand or do you want to run a warehouse? And it's a good question because I do find myself, it is time intensive. Like there's a lot of, you're running a warehouse. So you're like, I'm doing HR for the person that I've hired to do stuff. And I'm doing a lot of warehouse things where like orders get lost or things get lost, and doing a lot of logistics planning and all sorts of stuff that is not necessarily like building the brand. And so that's one of the biggest drawbacks I see is like, it is a lot of time and money that you could be spending elsewhere. So I totally understand why people go with a 3PL. It's also expensive, like buying shelving, buying all
Oh
the
yeah.
things to use. And like we get obviously discounted rates through Shopify or ShipStation or whatever you're using, but you're not probably getting the same discounted rate as a 3PL would get. So you do pay a little bit more in shipping. I also use customized packaging. I forgot to mention that. I use customized packaging for a lot of my products and shipping them out. And so that's just, if a 3PL can do that, it's just like another cost. And my unboxing experience is important to me. The brand itself is important to me. And a lot of those elements are like under the department of branding, as I see it. And so I want more control over it than a 3PL would offer.
Yeah, I think that control side of things is really a big one. I think that's like the biggest one because I mean I remember a year ago like we had like there was like a pro tennis player that bought one of our bags, and that I saw the name, I thought that can't be them, and I was so glad that like I had control over
Roger
like
Federer. We're just gonna
no,
name
if
drop right
only
now.
if only. No, I was so like it was amazing that she'd bought it, and like I wanted
Serena
like to make sure
Williams.
yeah. No. But I wish that I'd be saying it the name if it was Serena Williams. But anyway, yeah, so I wanted to have a control over it. So I wanted to add some stuff in there, like a little note, stuff like that. And there's been various times when I've wanted to just like add stuff in, or like a wholesale order. I want to like throw something in because they're the first time they've ordered or something. And it's nice to have control over that. And even though like you have more control because it's within very close distance to you, whereas mine's in another country, but I still speak. Yeah, I mean, but because I'm able to speak to the person who is doing it every day, and they will often reach out to me and say like, or even with returns, like we don't get that many returns, but it's nice that like that there's proper inspection of the returns, because there's been times where I don't know, a customer returns like an order of 4 items and they've returned 1 item, and I've been told that. Whereas sometimes with 3PLs, I get the impression it's just kind of like, oh, return in the bin, off we go to the next one, sort of thing. Like. So that's I think definitely control. The other thing I think is such a nightmare with 3PLs is there's so many of them. Like,
Yeah.
how do you even know where to go? It's almost like decision paralysis with 3PLs. And
Yeah.
I've looked into things like have you heard of the fulfill.com, I think, where like they like help you source 3PLs.
Yep.
But
I've tried
sometimes
them
I've
both.
done that. Yeah, I've spoken to them before as well in the past when I've kind of looked into things, and they'll give you like 8 3PLs, and you don't really know which one to go with. Like they've helped you find these like 8 3PLs, but then it's like at that point it's like, well, I can go and speak to them and get an idea of, but most 3PLs are going to tell you the same thing. Or we have, we've really got really good care of our, our products, we like all the shipping, and we don't charge extent that we're really transparent with our pricing. Like every 3PL tells you the same thing. So how are you ever going to know? And I think that's kind of what stopped me as well, is the fear of getting products stuck in a 3PL and not wanting to have to deal with that situation. Whereas like I have complete control over it. So I think it's a mix of like the mass amount of 3PLs out there, plus the lack of control once you've handed stuff over to them.
Yeah, definitely. It is, like you said, analysis process. And they all say the same thing, and there's a million of them, and you hear these horror stories, and I'm sure there's good ones out there because people are still in business doing it and that sort of thing. And I've looked at a few and been close to been like, oh, do I ship everything down to them and let them take over? And maybe I might do that at some point, but I don't know. It is like a huge decision, and it feels like sort of a rip the band-aid off moment. It's like, do you rip that band-aid off or do you leave it on? And right now I'm kind of leaving it on. I have felt a lot of pain recently about doing it in-house because I don't batch my orders, and I haven't, just because that's how I started. I was doing them one by one, and I actually used to draw mountain sketches on the back of sticker envelope orders, and people loved that. And I've had customers tell me they collected those envelopes and like stored them away because they were so cool. And it was fun to practice sketching out mountains. It was good practice for design. That's not possible anymore. It was quickly not. It was after like a couple of years, it was not possible. But that was fun, and it was like a very personal touch. But recently, I've been digging into switching to ShipStation from Shopify, and just to expedite things and reduce errors. Reduce errors, I think, is the big thing. It's like my person's very accurate. She's awesome at doing what she's doing. She's been with me for a year now, which is pretty incredible. The longest time I've had someone on board with me, and I'm also looking at using her for other tasks and like sort of extending her role into more things, which I think is pretty valuable. Um, and so getting to ShipStation is like, I'm working on the ShipStation migration where we're going to switch to it for our process is we're going to use barcodes on everything. I'm only barcoding select products right now for wholesalers who want it. And so that means we're picking by site basically. And there's been issues that have come up. Like I'm going to start tracking our accuracy rate more closely, but we're pretty good right now. But there are some errors that pop up where it's like a customer says they get a sticker instead of a patch, and it's the same exact design. It's really hard to tell in Shopify based on the image if it's a sticker or a patch. Granted, there's like a skew there, which is pretty close, but it's not the exact same. And so I'm working on barcoding everything and going through that process where it's like, okay, we probably should batch stuff as well. And it's like I have to spend a couple hours learning how to do all this and then train my person on all of it, where I could be spending that elsewhere in the business. So there's definitely an opportunity cost when it comes down to it. I also am pretty interested in shipping for other people. Like you mentioned, you do that a little bit. I've done that a little bit in the past, and it's helpful, I think, to turn your cost center into more of a profit center in some ways. At the end of the day, like I don't want to operate a 3PL, so I want them to be like lower volume people, but it's helpful to be like, okay, so we're collecting some income by storing their stuff and shipping it out here, so it's not just like a huge cost on the balance sheet. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because the thing about when you outsource it, one thing I forgot to mention is that when I first started shipping in the US, before I found the guy that I've got and set up all that where I used to live, I actually went to another brand based in Arizona who I just met in another community, and they were quite a big brand, selling supplements and stuff, and they actually offered to me. They said, well, we can ship out your stuff, and so I sent stock to them. And it basically got to the point where they actually just didn't really want to do it anymore. And of course, stock got stuck there, and then it like costs a lot of money to get it away out of there. And because they had their own like turnover, because they're fairly big business, so they basically assigned someone to ship our stuff, and that person left, and then they didn't. You're then speaking to the founder again, trying to get them to set this up for you again, and it's like that sort of stuff. So I obviously don't want to provide that experience to anyone else, but at the same time, there's a benefit. Obviously, when you're doing it in-house, you can outsource it to other people, and you can like take away that cost center. At the same time, you are putting yourself in, you're solidifying, the fact that you're doing this because there's suddenly now another business is depending on you for shipment. And you're taking away that flexibility. And I do think in e-commerce, like flexibility is a huge benefit. Especially when like it's the least amount of fixed costs you can have and more variable costs. And this is something that we've spoken about, but like the more like variable costs you have, even if they're slightly more expensive from a cash flow perspective, is just so much more important. And this is something I think I've heard quite a lot from like a lot of like the e-com gurus and stuff, from like Taylor Holiday, and people like say like if your staff are completely variable in terms of the workload, then as an e-com business it can be like hugely beneficial because in those slow months you're not burning so much cash. And so that's the benefit of the 3PLs. Well, the storage, is constant, but at least like, you've got other things where whereas like the person I got for shipping, I pay them a fixed amount every month. And it works out really cheaply on the months where we've got high volume. On other months, it's not so much. And so, I want it to work out for them as well, because, they are taking a risk in doing this, they're getting this, taking away their time to do this. And you want to make sure it works out for them. And so even with the other brand that I'm shipping for, I just said to them, from the shipping side, build them what you want. That'll be between you and them, and we'll just charge them a storage fee because in like from my perspective, I want to take away. I obviously want to take away some of our storage costs, but at the same time, I want to make sure that they are making money out of it. And I can't. Sometimes it's hard to justify paying them for what they've done to ship it, plus adding something on top and charging that to somebody else. It suddenly becomes a bit unwieldy from their side, and especially for the brand we're doing because they're quite small items, and so they're it's hard to add a big cost on top. So yeah, I think flexibility is part of the whole equation as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's interesting about like being able to kind of sort of scale up and down in the on and off seasons because it is so wild when it comes to like what the income looks like or the sales look like from a revenue standpoint. Would you, if you were starting from day zero, would you go with the 3PL or would you stick with your setup?
Yeah, that's a good question because part of the reason I still do this is because I don't want to let the person down that I've got shipping for me. Because they're making a bit of money on the side. They don't touch it. They've like a separate bank account. They told me like or PayPal. They don't even touch their PayPal. It just goes into their PayPal each month. They're like building up it's almost like a little small investment for them of like a bit of money each month just going and sitting aside. So like I feel, and they're a good friend of mine. So I feel bad, because I think that it is working for us at the moment, and I'll keep it going for a while. But it's one of those things where you that's the trouble about business sometimes is it's hard to make those decisions because what's best for the business, not always what's best for people. So that's a tough one. I think if I started from scratch from day zero, I would still be shipping everything out myself until I mean, like not now, but I would have continued to do what I did at the beginning, shipping everything out myself. But I probably would have gone for 3PL, yeah, and I probably would have just gone through the effort and annoyance of like maybe not liking a 3PL, having to move and do all that stuff at the beginning and not do it now. And now I can't be. I just the thought of it doing it now is not. But I suppose it might even be worse in 3 years' time. So it's one of those things where if you keep putting it off, get harder.
Rip that Band-Aid off.
I wanted to know about like ShipStation though, because in terms of like just in terms of like software in general, because we've like the guy I've got doing our shipping does a lot of shipping through Shopify because that's just the easiest for him. Like he finds it, so he got used to using Shopify, printing off the labels directly within the order. And like, it annoys me that no other shipping apps integrate within the Shopify dashboard apart from Shopify shipping, because it would be so nice to be able to just like print off a label within Shopify dashboard, but it's connected to ShipStation or something like that. So yeah, why? I guess my question is, why did you decide to do that? And is it that much? Is it going to like make things that much more simple for you / whoever's doing it for you through ShipStation?
Yeah, it's basically I looked at a few different shipping platforms a couple of years ago, including like Shippo and one other one. I think the parent company of ShipStation basically bought all of them, so they kind of have a monopoly, which is not ideal. Yeah. I could be wrong there. And ShipStation I've tried in the past too, and I hated it because I'm a super snob when it comes to website software UI and UX, and it's really ugly and not very easy to use. It's just not pretty. I mean, it's kind of easy to use, but speed and accuracy are the main reasons. So with Shopify, it's like a bunch of clicks to print out a label. From what I've been reading and researching, ShipStation, you can do labels way faster. Just the process of shipping an order is way faster. And then the accuracy standpoint, Shopify, funny enough, Shopify doesn't, until yesterday, doesn't allow you to do like packing lists where you're like, okay, I'm going to go do a bunch of orders because I'm going to do batch shipping. So I'm going to do like 20 orders or 50 orders right now, go collect the different things around the warehouse. There's 5 hats over here. There's 10 sweatshirts over here, 10 stickers over here. ShipStation allows you to batch like that. And it also allows you to scan the barcode for the product to make sure that it's accurate. And that process of scanning to make sure it's the right product in the right order is very important for the accuracy standpoint. Shopify until yesterday didn't have like a packing list, so you couldn't do batch shipping very easily. They announced yesterday at Editions one of their like quarterly feature drop, basically, which they're incredible. Their software innovation pace is unmatched in this world right now.
Yeah,
unbelievable. And they have hundreds of features that they're announcing, and one of them, I was looking through the list really quickly, was the ability to do a packing list. So it seems like they're pushing a little bit more in that direction. But in terms of like an advanced solution for shipping, it seems like ShipStation is the answer. It is annoying to pay another fixed cost. It's going to be, I don't know, $30 to $100 or something a month, depending on order volumes. And so that's pretty annoying. and also not super stoked to train my person on it because then I have to be very knowledgeable on it, and they're not super enthused to be switching platforms. But
Yeah,
it is what
quite
it is,
similar
and I think
thing.
it ultimately, yeah, I think it ultimately will be a win. I'm curious to see what the shipping rates will look like because whenever I shop around for shipping rates, it seems like everyone has the same sort of quote unquote commercial rates where you can save up to 85%, whether it's Pirate Ship or whatever platform it is or ShipStation. So I don't know if ShipStation will have more cost-effective rates or not. That'll be really interesting, but it's definitely more for the ability to scan barcodes and do batch shipping, and get things out quicker and more accurately. So we'll see. Hopefully, in the next month, I'll be done with it and I can circle back around and share some of the stuff from that migration.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I was talking about like Shopify editions because one thing I also noticed, which I thought was really cool, is I don't know if you do much shipping outside the US. For us, it's quite a big deal in the sense that maybe 40% of our orders outside the US, and therefore
Wow.
it can crush our margins or can be
Yeah.
okay depending on how we do it. And it's really hard to accurately calculate for all of that. Mostly, but not actually because of duties. Like people think it's because of duties and or shipping costs. It's usually because like couriers they charge a handling fee for shipping duty paid. So a lot like nowadays most customers don't want to get like a like duty charged them when a product arrives. Like it's not a good experience for someone to buy it's someone in France to buy say a bag of ours and then the UPS sends them an email saying, well, we're not going to deliver this until you pay 30 euros in duty or 40 euros in duty. Like most people are pretty upset about that. So Shopify has like duty and tax collections at checkout. And of course they've got stuff like Shopify markets, managed markets, there we are.
Mm-hmm.
Where they basically collect it all at checkout and things like that. And so I was using that for a little while because obviously it adds it all in. Um,
Mm-hmm.
One thing I found that didn't work is that you can't do pre-orders with Shopify Managed Markets because they don't pay you out on any international
Oh
sales
yeah.
until they've shipped.
Yeah.
And so that was a big problem. That was a big problem.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I found that out the hard way. But one thing I was going to say about Shopify shipping is that they recently also added in DHL e-commerce, which is like a DDP, like deliver duty paid shipping thing. So it's not
Mm-hmm.
just you, because the problem with UPS and FedEx is that if you ship anywhere outside the US, they don't they will handle the duty charges and everything, calculate it, but they'll charge you sometimes like $40 or $50 to manage that. It's like crazy.
Wow.
So sometimes you can have a shipment that would have cost like $35 to send, and it's like almost over $100 to send because they're just charging a ridiculous fee to manage the duty. And so I've been struggling a lot with that because we ship still out a lot of it most of it from the US. And so obviously the nice thing with Shopify with like the shipping with like adding more DDP stuff into Shopify shipping is that we can like I think DHL is the only one that doesn't charge or that charges like a very low handling fee for like duties. So like I'm obviously looking forward to that. But what I was going to say is that we use another app called Easy Ship. I don't know if you've heard of that one, but
Mm-hmm.
they're like mostly like around international shipping in terms of like providing good rates for international shipping. So we've been using a lot of that. But again, getting somebody else up to speed with using that. For a while, I was any international orders, like he was telling me, okay, can you create the label? I would create the label, send it to him, and he package it up.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to be doing this, you know? So, but
Yeah.
it's some of these platforms like ShipStation, Easy Ship, they're, especially for like when it gets into international ship and stuff, it's not easy to navigate.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's much easier for somebody who's not like natively used to this type of stuff to just go in Shopify, see the order, print off the label, done, sort of thing. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah, I haven't done a whole lot of international and I want to expand into that realm at some point. So I'm logging all this away because it is kind of a pain. And when I've done it, I've only done DHL actually like that. I think I have my global rates in Shopify like only enabled for DHL stuff. Because it does seem more hands off and DDP is nice. But I've always been shocked when customer like I remember one order that went to Canada a couple of years ago and it was like a $50 order and the person was like, I have to pay $50 in duties on this or something. I was like, yeah, I guess so. I don't I don't know what your taxes and duties are there. But it was pretty crazy. It's cool when Shopify handles all of that for you. That's helpful that like they do try and mitigate that as much as possible. I like that.
Yeah, I think it's just crazy nowadays that like even between Canada and the US, there's still massive duty charges. Like how is that the case? I don't understand, but yeah,
Yeah. That's a whole nother episode. International
yeah,
economics and tariffs.
yeah. But I mean, I think in summary, I think like obviously as you scale, it gets harder and harder. I think the use case for shipping in-house for most brands, I think, who do it, is because they have a very specific use case. Like it's like, furniture or something, where they just like, or like a custom built thing, where it's like tons of components go into it, and people, it's going to be very hard to find a 3PL that's willing to take that on unless you're doing massive volume. So I can understand that. I do think us, given that we're not like a massive amount of like technical kitting or anything that goes into our shipping our products, 3PL is probably long term a better solution. I think it's just a case of when and where, I guess.
Yeah, it's definitely not. I feel like it's a gray area. It's not like black or white. There's not like one right answer for every business, and it does seem like a business that's specializing in shipping and logistics, a 3PL, in that hard realm to operate in does make more sense, and especially if they're cheaper than doing it in-house. So we'll see. We'll see where, I guess, the paths take us, and if we decide to swap it up at some point and convert over. I don't know. I will be bummed when that happens. I will miss like doing it all in-house and having that control and like being able to visit the warehouse and check on products and that sort of thing. I get that that's all sort of secondary to like the goal of the brand is to grow and be profitable enough to pay me someday. That would be nice. Whole other issue, cash flow. But I'll be kind of bummed, but it's been quite the journey in the process, and I think it has been important to have it where I've had it and have my hands on it and that sort of thing. But I do think like the right answer almost is use the 3PL for most situations.
Yeah, and I mean, like, one thing I would say is I really enjoy like your content on like, behind the scenes, showing like the packing, everything. Like, I think people love that. And so I think you do that extremely well. So obviously that's like a particular thing for your brand, especially if like you're seeing people are like really getting like enjoying that sort of stuff, then it makes sense to keep it. I guess if you think about, one thing I hate is like almost feeling like I'm getting further and further like more detached from the product itself. Because you think about like outsourcing manufacturing, if you think about like a company 100 years ago, they would have, maybe done their manufacturing in-house, done their shipping in-house, done everything in-house, and everything would have been right there. But obviously nowadays we're in a situation where everything is so much farther detached, sorry, from, we're, maybe sometimes many, thousands of kilometers away from our products, and like we've also got, maybe people who are like freelancers or people working with us who are also far away. And so I guess that is just what it is nowadays. But sometimes I think, definitely like having product close to hand and being able to do that kind of content is really cool.
Yeah, it's really like a modern philosophy to do that, where it's like, in the name of efficiency, specialize as much as possible and lean on economies of scale and like squeeze out every penny everywhere. And I think I like that old school mentality of like, no, I'm going to keep this tight to the chest or whatever. Like this, I want my hands on it, and it might be not the most economical route or whatever. It might not make the most sense financially, but for the reasons that we've gone through, like these are the reasons why I'm going to hold on to it a little bit more and have that control over it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, there we are. 43 minutes about shipping.
Yeah. All right. Where are the logistics people at?
Yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. I like this episode. We're still working through all this sort of stuff. So I think it's always a work in progress, but it's always good to talk about, kind of like share ideas, new ways to do this stuff. I think cool thing is also things are evolving all the time, just like we talked about with like Shopify and like new ship like apps, new like opportunities for like shipping things cheaper. Sometimes sometimes things change the game a little bit, and who knows, maybe 3PLs won't be needed so much in the future, or maybe they will be more. I don't know, but we'll work through it somehow.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, catch you all later.